everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Lori Palau, and I am very excited to have a guest in the studio or via Zoom with me. We just wrapped up our Clutter Clinic series where we were going through all the different rooms in the house, and I did that series solo. And it was tiring. I gotta say, I'm like super excited to like have somebody else in my co-host seat to, bounce some ideas off of and do some of the heavy lifting. And so I have a perfect guest for you today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her and then I'm going to bring her on out. So joining me today is Noel Elie. And Noel, super interesting. She's a professional actress, writer, director, and producer. You may have seen her. So if those of you who are watching on YouTube, when you see her, you might be like, she looks familiar. Well, she's been in NBC's Shades of Blue. She's been in CBS's Blue Bloods. She's been in CW's Dynasty. She's been on Lifetime Movie Network. She was on Shark Tank, and she's a regular on the HSN network. So you may recognize her from that. But in addition to all of her acting stuff, she's also has her own PR and production company. And she's got some incredible guests. Clients, including Gabby Bernstein. Chris Carr. I want to talk to you about Chris Carr just because those of you who are like health guru people probably know Chris Carr, Crazy Sexy Diet, Deepak Chopra. The list is endless of some really big heavy hitters. So I wanted to talk to her today. You're probably thinking, well, what does that have to do with This Organized Life? Well, a lot of things. First of all, she's a woman entrepreneur. You know, I love women entrepreneurs. Second of all, although she's got all these amazing accolades, it doesn't come without her own personal struggles. She's had some health struggles, which we're going to talk about. She's had to deal with some life rejuggling of priorities due to some family illnesses and things like that. And she also has a lot of balls in the air, like many of us do. And I want to talk about how she navigates that. And then, of course, I want to really pick her brain on the imposter syndrome and that measuring up that we all see, whether it's through social media or like this image that we see of people who are in the spotlight of that they have it all together. And I'm sure Noel has a lot of things together. Otherwise she wouldn't be where she is in life. But I want to really unpack even maybe some of the, areas where she's had to really learn and pivot and develop some hacks that she can share with us. So I'm excited for our conversation. Without further ado, let me welcome my new friend, Noel Elie, to the show. Hi, Noel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so
What a
excited.
wonderful introduction.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's true. And I am really excited to talk about all these things because again, even when I was doing research in preparation of the show, and I mentioned some of this kind of off camera, like you've done so many things and you've so many like, proverbial check marks, like, well, she did that, she did that, she did that. But I'm sure it wasn't all handed to you. It wasn't all easy. It's been a long journey and we're just hearing like the highlight reel. Maybe you could just walk us through a little bit about who you are. Give us your backstory and then we can kind of walk through that.
Sure. So I was born in Bradenton, Florida, which is right next to Sarasota. It's on the Gulf Coast. And I lived there until I was 9. And then my family moved to Greenville, South Carolina. So I lived there until I was 18. And then 2 days after I graduated, I moved to New York City. And my family struggled financially. Times were very, very tough. And so I got a job at like 14, 15 years old. And in a way, I can look back on those times and be so grateful because it instilled a really hard work ethic. And I realized if I wanted something, I had to work for it. It wasn't going to be handed to me. And so I grew up modeling on and off. And so that was initially why I moved to the city. And after doing many amazing modeling jobs, I got involved in the production side of what was then called Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. And so I would produce events and sort of handle all the things. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of work. And through that, I met Gabby Bernstein, and she saw me kind of running the show. And she was like, "Oh my God, you have to come work for me." And so she goes, "You have to produce my events." And I started out as her assistant and then worked up to, being her producer. And I remember that night I went home and called my best friend, and I was like, "So I guess this is happening." And then I Googled how to produce an event.
Can I interrupt you
Sure.
because I have a question? Actually, well,
Sure.
first of all, my daughter goes to Clemson, so I'm all like, "Woohoo! Shout out
Oh,
Greenville!
yeah.
Shout out
Go
Greenville!"
Tigers.
Yeah, exactly. Such a cute city. Love Greenville.
Yeah.
Very cute.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know what year this whole Gabby Bernstein thing happened. Like, was she as big as who she is? Like, what
That's a
what
great
was going
question.
on? And
So,
and just tell people in case somebody's living under a rock and doesn't know who she is, just give
sure.
not that we're
Yeah.
trying to
So,
brag,
so
but
I had actually met Gabby at an event first, and it was her event. She was co-hosting with Sean Stevenson, and it was at the Gay Center in New York City, where she was setting up her own chairs. So, the venue was very like YMCA-esque, and she was setting up her own chairs. She was about to launch Spirit Junkie. And so Gabby is a New York Times bestselling author and incredible thought leader. And she at the time was starting to get some recognition. I mean, she had her second book, and she'd given me her book, and I went home and read it, and I was like, "This is amazing." And that was sort of where she was at. So she wasn't super well known, but she had started to get some traction. And the thing about Gabby, I learned so much. We worked together for 6 years, and I learned so much from working with her. I mean, I have so many clients now, they're like, "I want to be the next Gabby Bernstein." And I say to them, like, "Are you willing to live, eat, breathe, sleep your career? Because that's the type of work ethic it's going to take." And so yeah, that's a little
and,
bit about Gabby.
and I thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a really, and we'll kind of dive into that also a little bit in the show because we've got people that of all walks of life that listen to this show.
Mm-hmm.
Our core demographic are women. And some of them work outside the home. Some of them are stay-at-home moms. Some of them have a side hustle. Maybe they're kind of figuring it out. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs as well that listen to it. And I think we see people that are out there that are doing these incredible things, whether they're at the scale of Gabby Bernstein or there's somebody else that might be an influencer or somebody that's in their field. And they're like, "I want to do that." And they see that snapshot of what is
Right.
out there. And
Right.
they don't see all of the work behind the scenes, like you said, that goes
Yeah.
into it to
Oh my
get
gosh.
to that point. And
Totally. I mean, and the thing is too, like, she was willing to pay her dues. And I learned from that as well. I was like, you know what? And she's so successful now. She started, her events were like $20 a person, and now she can charge like $3,500. Like, she really worked her way up, and nothing was handed to her either. And so I think it's so important to shine a light on, it's like these celebrities when they're like, "Oh, I don't have to work out, I'm just naturally fit." And then you see all these pictures with them and their trainers. It's like, I think we need to continue to talk about the struggle, because it makes us all more accessible, and then it feels more attainable.
no, I could not agree more. So you started working for Gabby,
Mhm.
and were you just working for her at that point, or did you have your own production company? Was that like a
I did
full-time
not
thing?
I did not have my production company. So I was acting, and I started working for Gabby, and then I was also waiting tables, and I was nannying, and I was doing the whole typical struggling artist thing. And then what would happen is I would produce an event or a show or something, and someone would see me doing the thing, and they'd say, "Oh, will you come, will you come do my event, or will you launch my book? And so all of a sudden I realized I had this skill set where I could have a lucrative living and I didn't have to be the typical struggling artist. So I started my own production company. And initially that's all it was. It was just live events and, some commercials and video stuff, but that was it. And then from there it really grew.
So it's interesting because you had and I would think that acting was probably, at least when it started, was your primary
Hmm.
goal, and then the
Hmm.
production, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, your
No, you're right.
production stuff was kind of almost like, for lack of a better word, like a side hustle as
Oh
part of your
yeah,
other, like,
totally.
again, I used to live in New York. My husband's from the city. So I know all about the waiting tables, working odd jobs, that
Yep.
whole like life. I get that and have so much respect for you.
Mm.
Or anybody that does that and so I feel like then all of a sudden maybe the tables turned, and I don't know. I mean, obviously you're a successful
Mhm.
actress and you have all these amazing accolades, but at some point you were like, wait, this side hustle is actually pretty much a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot of actors and friends around me who were like, well, there goes acting, like if you're doing this thing, there goes acting. And that was always my thought. I always thought, well, if I don't have something to fall back on, I can't ever fall, that sort of thing. But what happened was that through my production PR company, it's opened so many doors. And so, I have these casting directors and directors and producers who see me as multifaceted and a multi hyphenate and are totally supportive of that. And I'm so grateful because it was really after starting my company that my career started to take off. And so, for any artist out there, I always say, have something outside of your craft, because otherwise you walk into these audition rooms with so much desperation because there's nothing else going on in your life. And so, I would walk into these auditions, and right after I'd throw away the sides, not out of disrespect, but because I had a job to do. I had other things to do. I was busy. And usually those are the things that I book.
And I think it just goes to speak to like our identities a little
Yeah.
bit.
Hmm.
And this can apply for anybody, regardless of where you are. When you're one thing, whether that's your career, whether that's your kids, whether you're a caretaker, when your one thing becomes your identity, and the success or struggles, I don't like to use the word failure, but like is dependent on that thing, that's a slippery slope
It
because
is. Yeah.
there's so many variables that are outside of our control.
Yeah. And
And
it puts so much pressure on yourself by doing that.
unbelievably. And I remember, and I've told the story before, I've told it on the air, but when I first had, when I had my first daughter, before I started this business, I used to be an executive recruiter, and that's what I did, and had my own company, and was it working in New York. And then I took time off. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and we had planned for it. My husband was super supportive, and he said to me, I, whatever you want to be home with her, that's fine. But whatever you do, I really encourage you to make sure that you have something else for
Mm.
yourself, because if she becomes your identity, and any new mom can
Yeah.
relate, and not just moms, dads, right? You become like this human is your whole world.
Yeah.
But he said, one day she's going to grow up and have a life, and you don't want to either be resentful or feel like you don't have anything. And so I always, whether I was volunteering, even if I didn't have a paying job, because I stayed home for a
Yeah.
few years. And so I think for anybody, and this can apply whether it's your side hustle, whether you're a stay-at-home parent,
Yeah.
whatever it is, having something that gives you value outside
Yeah.
of that one thing. And I feel
Yeah.
like you're that was an outlet that you didn't even realize. You were like, I need to make money and I'm good at
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have, friends and family members who are like miserable doing their typical 9 to 5 job. And they want to do something else, but they don't know what to do. And for me, I've always taken tiny steps of right action, and essentially like it's very cliche, but like jump and the net will appear. And
Mhm.
so for me, what that is doing things that light me up. So anything that brings me joy and excites me. And so for anybody out there listening, if you're feeling like, well, I don't know what to do, like, right, like I don't know what creative outlet I have, or whether it's volunteering or working another job or whatever it is, I always say make a list of the things you love and the things that bring you joy. And then also make a list of what are the common denominators of what people ask you. Like what do they come to you for advice for?
That's
And then
so
from
good.
there,
That's so
right?
good. So
And you'll
good.
see this theme. And then all of a sudden, you can craft that into a little side business if you want.
I love that. And I'm all like, you're speaking my language, because that's how I started my business. That's how I started
Wow.
Simply Be Organized. And people, you know, and a lot of people in my industry, and now I help other people do that as well. But I was like, this comes really naturally to me. And I saw other people struggling, and I'm like, I can do this. And so why not help? Why not use that natural gift
Yep.
or whatever, if you want to call it, and help other people? And then I'm like, wait, and I can make money doing that,
Right.
doing something that I really like, and that, not that it's not hard work, because what you're doing in is hard work, but it's it's like you can easily lean into it. So I love that. I
Totally.
think it's great. And I'm so supportive of anybody that's done
Mhm.
and can shed light on it, because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I want to just talk a little bit about, because when I was doing my homework on you, and I was reading some like articles that you were like, interviews that you were, that you had done, you
Mhm.
had talked about shifting in priorities. And again, I think that also leans into what I look at as an organized life, is you can not
Mhm.
do all the things all at the same time. Something's
Yep.
got to give, put on the back burner, whatever it is. And I know your mom had an illness, you've had some
Mhm.
health issues, and wondering if you would just be open to speaking about that a little bit.
Of course. Yeah. So in 2011, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And
Mm.
she was my best friend, and we would talk multiple times a day. And that rocked my world. And so I kind of made it my mission to try to save her life. And so I traveled all over the world, sometimes with her, sometimes without, to try different healing modalities and basically to keep her alive as long as we could. And that was when I grew up. My parents were always a little like weird, in the sense of like I grew up drinking rice milk. Like we never drank cow's milk.
Mm.
We shopped at health food stores when we could, that sort of thing. And so I already had a glimpse into a holistic world. But with my mom, I saw the importance for her and for myself of an integrative treatment plan. So doctors gave her 3 months to live with the
Mm.
diagnosis,
Oh
and she thrived for 6 years before she
gosh.
passed. And like she was such an example of, like, they say you can't teach old dog new tricks. That's not true, because she grew more in those 6 years than probably her whole life. And it was such a beautiful um, uh, journey to get to walk alongside her. And that's when I realized you have to be your own advocate when it comes to your body. We have divine sovereignty over our body. And just because a doctor says something, that doesn't make it fact. That's amazing. And this isn't to bash, I mean, some of my best friends and family members are doctors, but
It's
it's
called a practice for a reason. I tell people all the
exactly,
time. Yeah.
yeah. And it's all relative. And so that was my sort of uh, glimpse into integrative wellness. And then she passed in 2016. And uh, one thing I realized is I had empathy and compassion for friends that had lost parents. But until you go through it, you don't know. You just don't.
Okay. So I have a side story. So my mom, and I mean, my heart breaks, but I'm grateful that you had that time together. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was such a gift to have that time,
Totally.
especially knowing, and I know a
Yeah.
lot about, I do a lot in the cancer world from a volunteer
Yeah.
standpoint. So again, all about it, all the feels.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mm.
my mom passed away unexpectedly in 2011, and my
Oh, I'm
friends were all there
sorry.
for me, but thank you.
Yeah.
And I was the first one of my friends to lose a mom specifically, right?
Yeah.
And a parent, but especially a mom. And my friends were awesome, right? I mean, I guess there's books out there, but like, there's no manual have how to, and
Right.
everyone deals with grief differently and everyone's situation is different. And listen, my friends all showed up. They showed up for me. They showed up for my family, my kids, everything.
Mm.
A couple years later, one of my very, very good friends who never thought twice about like, oh, she wasn't there for me. Her dad had passed away after a long illness. And she came to me afterwards and she's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, for what? And she's like, I, I didn't realize like until it impacts you. And
Yep.
again, I never thought she wasn't a good friend, but in her mind,
Right.
she was like,
Yeah.
I don't even, you don't even know. And for anybody, again, I've lost both my parents. And for anybody
Oh,
that's lost a mom, and I say this every year on Mother's Day and on my mom's anniversary and all the things, not to be Debbie Downer, like until you lose, there's something about losing a mom,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
hats off to anybody. But again, it's really, it shapes a lot, but it forced you, from what I read, to really say, okay, we have X amount of hours in the day.
Yeah.
Am I going to be on auditions? Am I going to be doing
Mhm.
this? Am I going to be producing events? Or am I going to be with my mom? Am I going to be doing this?
Mhm.
And I think in life, we talk about you can have both and. It doesn't always have to be either or, but there might come some times where we have to make those priority
Yeah, we
judgment
have to make
calls.
those exactly. And it's something that I once in a while I've thought about, like, wow, those 6 years, because at that time too, my acting career was really starting to take, have a lot of traction. And then it was like I was
Mm,
pulled from it. And so sometimes I'll think about that, but a million times over, I would do everything I did again, because you don't get that time back. And life is so precious and it shows you that. And I don't know if you experienced this, but after, losing my mom, things became very clear. And one of the things growing up in the South was I'd always have a smile on my face. So like, even though times were tough and we had like lost our home, and I mean, literally the struggle was real, I would show up to school with a smile on my face and everything was fine. And after losing my mom, I could no longer do that. And a
mm,
lot of friends had a very hard time seeing me in this sort of somber place of like,
mm,
this is how I feel and this is how I'm going to feel. And if you're uncomfortable, I'm sorry. Like, it's going to be awkward, but I can't change because it's physically disgusting right now. So,
mhm.
like, fake anything. Do you know
Right.
what I mean?
Well, you only have so much energy. And I
Right.
think a lot of people, and I see this with people in all kinds of, loss in different areas. And when you have something that is really impactful and it hits you in a place in your life that, like you said, all of your energy had to be to like get up in the morning, or how am I going to go
Yeah.
on, or what am I going to do? Like, you're
Right.
like, to muster up energy to put a smile on your face. And that's why I say there's so much of life. And again, I'm sure you see it, not to stereotype, but you saw it as a model, as an actress in the field, even in the video production that you're doing. Again, you're putting forward this, you're presenting the best image of that person or of that whatever. And that requires a level of intentionality.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And there's a
Yeah.
place for it. I'm not saying there isn't, but when we are not at our best, like, no, we don't have time for that. And
No.
so that's where that level of authenticity is
Mhm.
really important, and being true to who you are. And that's really kind of what our messaging is here is, whatever that season of life you're in, there's areas that you can control, there's areas that you can't. What's a priority for you now, you
Yeah.
know, and what are you going to like give some grace to, because this is kind of where we are.
Yeah. And remembering we're not meant to do it all. We're not meant to to work, to make money, to live, to die. Like, that's not how we're meant to live. We're meant to be happy. We're meant to bring light and joy and peace. And, you know, going through struggles, you know, they say without suffering, there can be no compassion. And it's so true. It's compassion for others, and it's grace towards yourself.
Absolutely. I think it's a perfect time for us to take a quick break, and we're going to come back. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of the tactical and practical organizing stuff, from your space to productivity hacks, because obviously you have a lot going on. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with Noel. Okay, Noel. So let's talk a little bit about, so you gave a little bit of glimpse to your life growing up. No, you guys didn't have a ton of money and resources. So I would assume that you probably didn't have a ton of like excess stuff and a lot of those extra things that add to clutter. But what was, or was there a role that organization played? Did you guys tend to hold on to things because you didn't have a lot of them? Was it really important? Like, give us a little bit of background of kind of what that was like for you.
That's a great question. So my mom, I joke, she used to make my bed with me in it. Like, she was, I mean, nothing was out of place. She was the best at just purging and getting rid of stuff and not holding on to things. Even I remember when I was in high school and we were looking back at some of her old things, and I was like, why didn't you keep this outfit? Like, seeing pictures, and she was like, please, you know, and she was so remarkable, just literally only keeping what we needed. And my dad was quite the opposite. So he would drive her a little crazy because he wanted to keep all the things all the time. And her way won. But for me, when I was younger, I was little, I was very like tidy and neat. And then as I got in middle school and high school, I was so busy. I was cheerleading for my high school, but then also on an all-star team, and I was modeling and school. So I was so busy all the time that I was kind of like a tornado. Never dirty, just like messy, like throw my stuff around. But my mom was there to clean it all up. And so in my adult life, my husband is the one that sort of keeps everything put together neat. And I try at times, but it's that sort of similar thing of, well, I'm so busy and I got a lot going on. But, you know, those are reasons, which reasons are just excuses. So I've really been trying to work on it for our marriage.
Well, it's funny because I talk about different types of clutter. I talk about the physical clutter. I talk about emotional clutter, which like your mom didn't seem to have. And I'm a lot like your mom in that way. And then we talk about calendar clutter, which is that being overscheduled and busy. And then that like leads into what I call like the 5 clutter pitfalls. And one of which is time. It's I'm not emotionally attached to it. I know what I need to do. I'm just so busy. I don't have time. So it's not a priority. And so, you know, every time whenever I talk to people, not like I'm trying to label people, but I'm in my head going, oh,
Totally.
I see where our clutter struggles are, you know, it's just, and time is a huge one, especially for people that are doers and that have a lot of balls in the air, you know, and are doing that. So it makes sense. And your husband is, you know, it's also probably, and I could be wrong on this, but like, you know, at the end of the day, he's going to do it. So it's less of an incentive because you know you're going to come home and your stuff's going to be picked up off the floor, you know?
Right. Yeah, no. And it's what's really been funny about all of this. It's sad, but I'm able at this moment in time to laugh about it. I'm like, how do I condense this? But I have been through a plethora of health issues myself in the last 2 years. And which we can get into if we have time. But the thing is, so I was diagnosed with fibroid tumors, Lyme disease, co-infections, and black mold toxicity. And I moved to LA 2 years ago to a beautiful renovated home. And I noticed I started to get sick and more sick and more sick and didn't know what was happening. And we found out very recently that there was mold in our home, and you couldn't see it anywhere, you couldn't smell it, but it was causing both my husband and I to have severe reactions. And not only did we move last week, we had to get rid of 95% of our things. So talk about a rebirth. And, I'm talking all of my clothes, our clothes, all of our furniture, all of our books. I mean, everything, everything.
Does
And
the mold like stays on that stuff?
yeah, so it's mycotoxins from the mold that can contaminate anything that is porous. So anything cloth, paper. And so for us, certain things can be wiped down, like a dress. I had like a room and board wood dresser
Mm-hmm.
and nightstand, things like that. But I couldn't take because I was so sick. I'm talking like couldn't leave bed, had to take time off work, had to take time off acting. We had to get rid of all of it. And so it's such an interesting place to be in now, because I'm recognizing how mindful I have to be around anything we bring into our new home. Because, number one, sometimes you buy stuff where it's stored in mold. So you have to, like, everything is about intention now. And I had an interview last week and I had no clothes. I literally had one outfit. And I'm someone who had like racks of crap, you know what I mean?
Oh my
And
gosh.
I ran into Bloomingdale's and grabbed an outfit off the rack, bought it, and left. And I realized I was falling into an old pattern and an old version of, well, I don't have time and I just need to grab stuff and go. And it was like my whole nervous system was like, nope, we're not doing that anymore. Now it's about intention. Try on the outfit. How does it feel on your body? Do you know what I mean? And so it's
Yeah.
been, in a way, for me, it's like been forced on me, but I'm trying to really find gratitude in the whole thing, because, you know, how many people can say, no, you know what? I no longer am attached to material things. I no longer have that attachment, because my health relies on it right now. So
That is
it's been wild.
incredible. So first of all, what's the state of your health now? First and foremost, let's just
Yeah. So right now I am detoxing. So what happened was I was diagnosed with a fibroid tumors in 2020, and they grew. Fibroid tumors are in your uterus, and 90% of the time they're benign. And they grow. Doctors don't really know why women get them. And for me, I have like 10 in my stomach, which is wild.
my
But there's
girlfriend
one,
had them and had to have surgery.
had to have
So,
surgery. Yeah.
mm,
And that's what the doctors wanted me to do initially. And I wanted to get to the root cause,
mhm.
because sometimes people will get the surgery and then they'll grow back. And I was like, well, I don't want that. I want to know why I have them. So I continued to dig deeper and deeper. And that's when I found out I had Lyme disease and these co-infections, and then the mold toxicity. And then what I found out is the mold was actually feeding the fibroids, causing them to grow, and it activated the Lyme disease. And so it's so wild what mold can do. It's like this silent epidemic that people don't talk about. But now that I've removed myself from the mold, I feel so much better. So that in itself
Wow.
is a win. And now I just got to detox it out of my body.
So again, not that this is a science podcast, but now I'm
Sure.
fascinated, first of all.
Right.
Um, so will hopefully will those fibroids shrink? Is that the hope or the
That's
goal
the
that
that's the
they're
hope. Yeah.
okay?
And if I actually am getting another MRI on the 15th, and if they have shrunk, then I know what I'm doing is working. If they haven't, then I will consider the surgery.
Right.
But I'm so glad I didn't do it at that time, because the mold would have I would have come home to a moldy home, and it just would have activated all the crap, and just would have been a bad situation. And so again, it was that reminder of like, no, 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 we have intuition, we have sovereignty over our bodies, trust it, you know?
And the other thing again, I'm a lot older than you, but I at any age, our health issues can rear its ugly head, or things that we're that we're exposed to. But there's things that happen in our lives that slow us down, even if we don't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
And when, organization and the stuff that we have in our homes and in our lives and the activities that we do and the commitments that we have, if the less that we can consume, it
Mm,
makes us easier to be able to lean in when and have margin in our lives when things do pop up. When you
right.
are scheduled to the gills and things are like everything is jam packed, and I'm hopeful that post COVID we don't just go back to the way things were, where we're being
Right.
over scheduled. Like I
Yeah.
talked to a lot of people when they were like, when COVID first happened, before people got over it, of being in their
Yeah.
homes, people were like, it's so nice. I could have a family dinner and it's so nice. We don't have to be running to a million different places. And, we can have this and we could slow down and we don't have all of this, there's less kind of keeping up with the Joneses and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that we can kind of hold on to some of that, because when even to take the time to go to the doctor and address it. How many people put off things or ignore things because they are just
I did.
like
Yeah.
persevering ahead?
Ab- Absolutely. And I did 100%. And I really thought this past January, I was like, I'm going to book a pilot and I'm going to be a series regular. And thank God that didn't happen, because if I were on a television show right now, there's no way I would be going into doctors and getting treatment, and like there's no way. And so it's just having a trust and whatever you believe in, whether it's God or the universe or humanity, that we're being guided. And sometimes a detour is actually for our benefit.
Absolutely. I love it. And again, you said it earlier and I think it's worth reiterating, is that time, whether it's
Yeah.
time with yourself, whether it's time with an ailing parent, whether it's time that you choose to stay at home with your kids. And this is to no shame to people who go back to work right away. I've
Sure.
done both, but I took time off when my kids were little, and I look at where my career could, and even when
Sure.
I went back to work, I was on a limited schedule because my husband traveled a lot, and I knew. And it's easy for us in whatever scenario you're in to go,
Hmm.
what if I
Right.
had done this? And
Right.
I think we need to just be happy with the choices that we make.
Yeah.
And when we go, and nothing has to be forever. Like if you're,
Yeah.
if you want to make a pivot in your career, if you want to make a pivot in your life, if you want to change the way that you're living, the way that you're eating, the way that you're doing things, it's never too late. You could just like start today.
Totally.
Today's the day.
Yep.
So I want to talk a little bit about, and this wasn't even kind of on my plan, but since you brought it up, so this purging process that you had to go through, um, was it emotional? Was it cathartic? Was it freeing? Like all of the above? Like
Yeah.
what did that elicit, getting rid of all of
Yeah.
that?
It was it was tough. It was all of the above. It was at times spring. So what I did was, and it's funny, one of my very good friends um, is a home organizer, and I knew I could call her, but I didn't. And the reason I didn't was because I realized this is so much greater than just, you know, physically removing items. This is emotion, especially because that I had clothes of my mom's that, my mom was like the cutest little like hippy dippy war free people, like it's so, and so I didn't want to get rid of those things, but I had to. And so I really tried to pull from her strength. And, I would think like, well, what would my mama do? And I did it in stages. So for me, it was like starting with my clothes. I would get rid of, 10%, and then 5 days later, get rid of some more. And with each thing that I got rid of, there were times where I was like, I would put them in bags and, you know, like not look at them and tell my husband, like, just get it out, because there were times where it was just easier to see it gone than to like really think about it. But I did definitely have to allow myself to grieve. And one of the things I really, I would say, out of everything that I got rid of, my furniture, our bed, like things that I loved, the things that really got to me were books that my mom had handwritten in. And then when she was sick, I got her a amethyst crystal biomat. So it's there's frequencies, and it heats up, and it's really healing. And uh, I having to let go of that was really painful. Not because I didn't have this mat and I loved laying on it, but because it was associated with my mom, and like there was a part of me that felt like it's been almost 5 years. Sometimes it feels like she's slipping away. At
Mm-hmm.
least I had this tangible thing I could hold on to. And so I had to give myself a lot of grace, and my husband had to give me a lot of grace. There were times he would get really frustrated, and I would just say, I completely understand why you're so frustrated. And I'm doing the best I can. I don't know how to do this. And I'm trying to do it on my own because I know this is what I need. But I just need help, in the sense of like, be patient with me, you know?
That's so good. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's so like that is so great. And I mean, I do a lot of like a lot of talking and speaking about understanding how people, the process, really the
Mhm.
process that people need to go through. And like I
Yeah.
said, I have friends who've lost children to
Oh,
cancer. I have friends who
yeah.
have lost parents. I mean,
Mm.
anytime you have, and like, so these are things that, again, like you said, it's not just about the stuff, it's about
Right.
that is a part of them in some way. And
Totally.
it is not as clinical as
Right.
saying, okay, let's be logical. We need to get
Right.
this is bad. This isn't good for us. We don't have space for it. Like you can get
Right.
all the logic
Right.
in there. I always say to, like, whenever I would like be battling with our kids about something and my husband would have an argument, like I'd be like, what you're saying sounds great on paper. Like it sounds
Right.
great,
Right.
but we're dealing with all of these other intangibles. And that's what you're
Yeah.
talking about. You're talking about
Yeah.
the emotion, you're talking about guilt, you're talking about this representation of something else. And so I completely, my heart goes out to you, but I'm proud of you because I know that that
Oh,
was
thank
not
you.
easy. I really am.
Well, one of the things that helped me was, thank you so much. I would look back at photos. So we had to get rid of our photo albums, right? But I wanted to keep the pictures. So I put them in a sealed bag and we put it in storage. And as I was looking through the pictures, I would see all these years with all these really cute outfits. And I would say, well, I don't have them now. And I'm okay. And so it was like remembering that things have a season. And um, there is a feeling of feeling free without all this stuff. And so I would just try to hold on to that as well throughout the process.
I love it. And something that just like came to me as you were sharing all of this is you are you remain the best version of yourself, right? You're a great version of
Mm.
yourself without your stuff isn't what's
Right.
defining you. And
Yes.
so many people, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, use stuff as a safety net, as a crutch, as a status symbol. And again, I'm not pointing fingers, laying blame, saying this, but we tell ourselves these false narratives of our worth is determined by X. Our
Yeah.
worth is, and
When I
like,
get this, I will be, yeah.
right.
Yep.
And I'm not saying like, sure, who doesn't like nice stuff or wants to drive a nice
Sure.
car or have whatever. But again, you're still standing. Like you had
Right.
to go through this and it was hard. And it's probably not something that you would necessarily want to have to do again, but you're still you're still you, and
Yeah.
probably have learned so much about resilience from
Mm,
this.
absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. So where can people, because I mean, I could talk to you like forever, like we could go on and on, but I think this is a great place for if people want to learn more about you, learn
Mhm.
whether it's working with you, following you, any of the things that you're doing, where can people go to learn more about you?
So I'm probably the most vulnerable on the gram. So my handle is at Noel underscore Ellie. And then I have my website, which is noelellieproductions.com, and productions is plural. But yeah, I'm super vulnerable and honest on the gram because I think so often we show the highlight reel, and um, that's a great place to stay in touch for sure.
I love it. And well, of course, for anybody that's long-term listeners, or if you're new to our show, we put links to everything that we talk about in our show notes. So we'll have links for your website and Instagram and
Great.
all the stuff on our website. We're going to take one more quick break, and then we're just going to put you back in the hot seat to hit you up with, even though you've been super vulnerable and honest, we're going to put you back in for our rapid fire questions. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, Noel, this has been really fun. And thank you again for sharing. This is like, I love when people get honest and real and talk about things outside of just the top line. And we can really go below the surface because we're all humans. And as much
Mhm.
as we look great on the outside, we all have our own struggles that we're dealing with that people
Mhm.
don't always know about. And I think it's
Right.
refreshing, not that we want this, but we want to say, like, oh, somebody else is going through something too. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Yeah.
So you've been an inspiration. You obviously work with some amazing people who are inspirations. So hopefully this question won't be too difficult, but I love learning from our guests. What is there a book, or you could name a couple, that have really been transformational or inspirational to you in your life? It could be old,
Sure.
could be new, whatever.
It's a really easy read. It's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
I we have that book.
Yeah, I love that book. I uh, if I say there's a book called I Declare by Joel Osteen, and um, for me, it's not so much about who wrote it or having Christian principles. What it's about for me is making declarations and
Mhm.
affirmations. And so I remember one time something fell through in my career and I was devastated and I didn't have anything lined up. And my mom gave me the book, I Declare. And for 31 days, you say these declarations. And I did it begrudgingly because, I was like, why not? And after that, it was like miracle after miracle after miracle I came into my life. And, so it's like whether it's that book or just having a mantra that hits home for you and repeating it day after day for 30, 31 days, it can shift everything around you. And so I'm a big, advocate for positive affirmations and declarations. So I would
I
say those two books
I
are
love it.
amazing.
That's great. And of course, and we'll link up to those as well for anybody that wants to check
Sure.
them out. I think it's great. And yeah, I mean, I'm all about that as well, and practicing gratitude and starting your days with intention. And again, I think it really does. It plays into our minds. It plays into how
Yeah.
we perceive things and how we approach things. So it really it
Yeah.
does. I've seen it firsthand. So thank you for that. Okay. And
Mhm.
then our last two questions, which are fun, hopefully fun questions for people, because our show is about honesty, it's about authenticity, and we talk about where people are thriving and where they're struggling. So, in this particular season of your life, where do you feel like you are the most organized, and where do you feel like you're a little bit of a hot mess?
Ooh, I feel like a big old hot mess a lot of the time, um, to be honest. But in terms of thriving, I feel like I don't know if it so much has to do with organization or just I'm thriving by saying no.
I love it.
So
That
time,
is, that's,
like you said,
yeah,
right?
yes.
I've, 4th of July, I said no to a party, which I'm a big FOMO person. Like I want to do all the things. And I just said, no, 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 I need to be with me and my man. And so, yeah, I'm thriving there. And otherwise, I'm a mess in a lot of other areas.
Hey, listen, it's okay. We all are. And I think that's
Yeah.
again, goes to show that we're all human.
Yeah.
And there are times where, you could be like, I'll say sometimes I'm thriving in my business and other times I'm like, what am I doing?
Right.
So
Right.
that's just how life is. And so I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing your story with our community. I know there's going to be tons of value. I can't wait for everybody to hook up with you, learn more. Super exciting. And again, if this is your first time tuning into our show, welcome. Please follow us or subscribe wherever you are, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on YouTube. So if you want to watch us, you can head on over to our YouTube channel. I'm also on Instagram at Simply Be Organized. Or if you want to see pictures of my dog and my kids, you can follow me at Lori Palau as well. I don't really care, but it's not as exciting. Until next week, I hope you guys all find some inspiration and some joy, and I'll be back soon. Peace out.